All right, what's up, YouTube? This is BoxingWave. I just want to give a quick recap for the Emmanuel Navarrete fight against Joet Gonzalez. All right, it was a very good fight last night. The problem was, I think the main fight started like really late. Like I think it was after 1 in the morning at some point. Okay, so it was too late. I tried to stay up and watch the fight. I was even thinking about just turning on the camera and just covering it live. But it was just too late. I ended up going to sleep and watching the fight first thing this morning. It was a really good fight. I didn't do a breakdown for the fight. We've been all week. It's been really about Wilder and Fury all last week, all this week. But I actually thought that Navarrete was going to stop Joet Gonzalez late in the fight. That was my prediction of the fight. It actually ended up being a very competitive fight, a very action-packed, a lot of punches being thrown, and it was a good fight all the way through. All the way through. We didn't get any actual knockdowns, but it was just a lot of scoring shots on both ends, and it was a war. It was pretty much a war. Both fighters took a lot of damage, especially Joet Gonzalez. But it was a very good fight. I was cool with the scorecards, except that one judge. There's always one judge. One judge had it 118 to 110. I personally had it 116 to 112. I thought the other two judges were cool, but I thought it was 116, 112 for Navarrete. Definitely some swing rounds in there for sure, but I thought 118, 110 was a little bit too wide for me. But it was, listen, Emmanuel Navarrete is a very good fighter. I've become a believer. I wasn't so much of a believer back when he beat Isaac Dobe, which was around the time I started watching him. The problem is with him, he's a very good boxer and he can actually do everything. He can actually do it all. The problem I think people have with him is that he is kind of awkward, right? He is awkward. And I think that's probably reason why people don't rate him that high. Like people don't bring him up that high, like that often. But he's very awkward, but his style is very effective. He actually can pretty much do everything. I think the only two major complaints I have with him is that he has terrible balance, right? And you saw that in this fight against Gonzalez. Terrible balance. I mean, he's tripped up a lot. If you catch him with a good shot, it might not even be clean. He kind of falls off balance often, okay? So he doesn't have the greatest balance because he throw punches from weird angles at times, and he's like, it's very awkward. If you watch him, you've seen him fight, you'll see what I'm talking about. And his defense, I know he's very durable. He's extremely durable. I mean, he even got rocked this fight, but he has great recovery, right? He can definitely take the shots, but you got to be careful with that because at some point, especially when you start fighting elite fighters, well, he is fighting elite fighters already, but once you start stepping up, and if at some point these guys actually unify in this division, I'll get to that in a minute. You got to be careful. We saw that with Adam Kanaki recently against Robert Helenius twice. Kanaki winning that fight, being, the first fight being, the favorite, a heavy favorite. And he ended up getting caught with a shot by Helenius, got hurt, got stopped in that fight. And even it happened again in the second fight. This guy who threw a lot of punches, was extremely durable, got stopped. But he showed us what I like Navarrete, what I like about him. People don't, and I know it's awkward, but people don't give him enough credit for his boxing ability. Not only does he punch hard, volume is extremely high. He's throwing 70 plus punches around. But he knows how to fight going backwards. Joet, a lot of times in this fight, he was the one coming forward, and Navarrete was the one going backwards. And he knows how to fight going backwards, all right? I don't think he has the greatest defense, but he knows how to fight, and he knows how to set up shots on his back foot. We know he can fight going forward, but he can fight going backwards. He can move as well, and I think people sleep on that fact. He can counter well. He attacks the body well. Even in this fight, he struggled a lot because, and this is the thing with Joet, honestly didn't know much about him leading up to the Shakur Stevenson fight. That was my first time watching him. Of course, leading up to that fight, I went back and saw some of his other work. But I really didn't know about him until that Shakur Stevenson fight. And, it was one of those fights where he was completely neutralized by Shakur, outboxed, but it wasn't a good fight. It wasn't an action-packed fight. He definitely redeemed himself from that loss. Even though he lost, it was an honorable loss. It was a good fight against Navarrete. All right, so he's definitely a guy that I'm going to continue watching. I think with him, the only thing with him, he takes so much damage. He took so much damage in this fight in order to compete. And yes, the fight was competitive. As I was watching, I was listening to the commentary. Shout out to Andre and Tim. They give great commentary. But even though he was doing well early, you can tell that he has to take a lot of damage in order to keep up with Navarrete. Yes, his defense was very tight, but he was still taking damage. And even after the first round, you could start seeing in his face that he was getting hit. I know a lot of the shots were blocked. They weren't, a lot of the shots weren't that clean that landed, but every shot that did land, it hurt him in some kind of way. It did some kind of damage, and Navarrete had a tough fight because the guard of Joet Gonzalez was so tight that he always had to punch through his guard or around this guard, or go to the body. It wasn't as clean as Joet Gonzalez's shots that were straighter, they were shorter, and they were just more clean, they were more telling. But Navarrete hit so much harder. I think even Andre Ward, you heard the loud thud every time he landed a shot. Even the ones that was blocked, you can just hear it. This guy really got some serious power, and he can punch and land big even while he's on the move. He's such a very dangerous fighter, and I definitely respect him. Again, I know he's not going to be everybody's cup of tea because of the awkwardness in his style. It doesn't look pretty. He said it. It doesn't look pretty, but it's very effective, and it works. And definitely respect him as a fighter, right? It was a very good fight. It was back and forth throughout the whole fight. The referee didn't take any points away from the low blows. Joet did start landing a few low blows in there. He didn't take any points away. There was a time where Navarrete went down from the low blow when the ref separated them, and the ref was like, "Get up or I'm taking a point." Like, the ref didn't care. He let the fight continue. I guess he felt like Navarrete wasn't really hurt. I don't know how, but whatever. He didn't take any points. We can argue. I think if the fight was closer and if Joet started to really take advantage of the fight because of those low blows, and because of maybe the way, Navarrete, if he was really hurt by them, it could have really affected the fight. But I think the referee should at least give him a hard warning. If you're not going to take any points, give him a hard warning like, yo, the next one I'm taking a point. We didn't really get that. And Navarrete didn't even go and try to return, low. I think he might have drew one, but he didn't really try to return the low blows or anything, all right? But it was a very action-packed fight, a lot of hard hitting, a lot of clean shots, back and forth. The one thing about this division, and I have an issue with this division, and, I even did a little research, and I was trying to figure out when the last time these guys at 126, I mean at featherweight, not super featherweight, not at super bantamweight, I mean at 126, when is the last time did two fighters really unify? It's been a lot of guys through there. Lomachenko has been through that division. Leo Santa Cruz has been through there. Carl Frampton. There's been a lot of fighters over the years. And going back to Orlando Salido and Yuriokis Gamboa fight, which was years ago, was 10 years ago. That's the last unification fight that I've seen. And even though Gamboa won that fight, he was stripped in the very next fight because he didn't go to the same day weigh-in. All right, so he didn't even have a unification defense, kind of technically. All right, even though it was a unification match, the second fight wasn't a unification defense for him. All right, but Gamboa and Salido was the last unification fight And that's the problem I have with this division. I've always had, it's like a pit stop. You know, it was more competitive at 122 over the years. And then guys decided to move up, go to 126 and stop there before going to 130. Yeah, certain fighters stopped at 126, maybe came back down like Nonito Donaire, you know, but for the most part, the 126 division, the featherweight division, has been a pit stop. Guys are not looking to stay there long. Guys are not looking to unify. You got champions like Gary Russell Jr. that has a ton of defenses, you know, for that title. Been holding on to that title, fighting mandatories. But he's not unifying at all, you know, and he hasn't fought since, it's going to be almost 2 years. You know, he hasn't fought since the beginning of the pandemic, and he's just been fighting like, and I understand he wanted to fight Leo Santa Cruz, but the show doesn't stop at Leo Santa Cruz, you know. I understand a lot of these fighters are not trying to fight him, but I think his promoter, maybe Al Heyman, they need to do better and try to secure some sort of unification match, some sort of match that, you know, get Gary to fight maybe more than once a year. All right, and then you have everybody else. You got Kid Gallahan that's holding the title. I think Leo is still holding his title down at 126. That doesn't make sense. All right, I would love to see the unification against any of these guys. Kid Gallahan, it would be a good fight with Navarrete. Gary Russell Jr. would be a good fight. Leo Santa Cruz would be a great fight. That would be an excellent fight. Even if Navarrete has to move up to 130 to fight Leo, I would love to see that fight. That would be an amazing fight. All right, so there's plenty of options out there for Navarrete. I like the fact that he's staying active, but I would like to see some sort of unification at some point. All right, but good fight. Joet Gonzalez, good war with him. I know he took a lot of damage, but he's definitely fighting at the elite level, and he gave Navarrete the toughest fight I've seen so far. All right. I don't think he almost won. I thought Navarrete still clearly won the fight, but he gave Navarrete, even hurting him at one point, a lot of trouble in there. And it was a good fight. All right. So anyway, if you didn't see the fight, I think it's definitely worth it to go back and check it out, especially if you have ESPN. But if you don't, I'm sure it's like on YouTube, on the internet, floating around somewhere. It was a good fight. All right. And that's it, man. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.